Going into the Snyder Cut, I was filled with interest and trepidation. This is an unprecedented move for the Hollywood machine that may have far-reaching repercussions down the line, or it might just be a one-off curiosity that never happens again. We'll see how the success of this thing dictates what the industry will do going forward. But it is a fascinating situation nonetheless. And the trepidation came from the fact that I was going to be getting 4 hours of pure, unadulterated Snyder. Now, I'm not someone who has a massive hate boner for Snyder. In fact, I'm usually one of the people that at least I know who leans more positively towards his DC efforts than a lot of other people online are. But that being said, I was also never a big mega fanboy of his where I loved everything the man ever did without being able to acknowledge his legitimate issues as a storyteller and director. Snyder is able to do a lot of cool things, but he's also able to fuck a lot of other stuff up. And so I was worried at what a 4-hour pure unadulterated Snyder movie would look like. And after seeing the Snyder Cut in a couple sittings, I have to say that this is probably Snyder's strongest directorial effort in a long time. It easily has the best structure of one of his movies since Watchmen, and it's his biggest and most successful, I want to say, crowd pleaser since 300. See, Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, while I'm more positively predisposed towards those movies than a lot of other people are, they have one legitimate problem that turns a lot of folks off, and even me to a certain point. And that is their structure. What I mean by structure is that the last two DC efforts by Snyder had the same issue. Their balance of action and dialogue scenes was completely off the fucking rails. Both Man of Steel and BVS spend an hour, or in BVS's case 2 hours for the Ultimate Edition, mostly devoid of action sequences, choosing to set up the characters, the conflicts, and talking about the themes of the story, and that all stuff is fine and dandy when you properly balance it out with the action to create a cohesive whole. Snyder was not able to really successfully do this in either of his previous two DC movies. With BVS and Man of Steel, you have the unfortunate situation where half or 2/3 of the movie are filled with nothing but dialogue, and then the entire last hour of each movie is just action sequence after action sequence. It creates this very front-loaded feeling where the last chapter of the movie that is supposed to maybe have a 20-minute action sequence to half an hour at absolute most has another action sequence immediately in front of it that's a comparable length, and then another, and it just becomes really exhausting. Even I myself, who has a pretty big pain threshold for that kind of stuff, can get worn out by the climaxes of BVS and Man of Steel. This time, Snyder was able to sensibly space out the action sequences with the dialogue scenes, and so you have a pretty damn good ratio of both of them. The only action sequence that goes on for a bit longer than the others is the climax, but that's the final battle, and it makes sense for it to do so. We also have more than enough breathing room before the final battle and the previous big battle sequence before it to get re-energized, to muster up the strength to keep focusing on what's going on in the movie. As for being a crowd pleaser, for all the Warner Brothers executives who apparently called this version of the movie too dark and grim and it's just like BVS, I have to wonder what fucking crack were they smoking. This is tonally many shades lighter than either Man of Steel or BVS. It's got more levity than either of those movies. Most of the time, it doesn't throw as much shit at them to where it becomes sometimes incomprehensible for anyone who hasn't read the comic books. And there's more than enough, like I said, levity between the cast and sometimes the characters on their own to lighten things up. Here, the comedy majoritively makes sense with the tone of the rest of the movie. The characters take things seriously when they're supposed to, but when they allow themselves some humanity and comedy, it makes sense for who these guys are. In fact, if you just cut down this version of the movie back in 2017 into a more digestible length, you very easily could have put it out. It probably would have gotten comparable reception, if not better reception, than what it's getting right now. And even if it performed exactly the same as the theatrical cut and the box office, it still would have been less of a fucking money pit than the theatrical version, where they reshot substantial chunks of existing footage, just ballooning the budget up to absurd degrees. Besides this, the other big improvements are done to some of the characters, primarily Cyborg, Flash, and Steppenwolf. A lot of people pre-release have talked about how Cyborg is the main character of the movie, how he's the heart and soul of it, and that's absolutely true. Ray Fisher has one of the hardest roles in the entire movie movie, possibly the hardest one, given what character we're talking about and the situation we find him throughout the film, and he pulls it all off masterfully. It is a fucking crime what it was done to Cyborg in the theatrical version. Not only are the character's powers better explained, so is his origin, he's given far more personality, and when I was watching the film, I thought to myself, damn, Cyborg has probably the coolest powers out of anyone in this team. While Ezra Miller's performance is probably not still going to be to the liking of Flash purists, I cannot be fucked to care about the Flash. I would have been just perfectly fine with him just getting a couple cool action sequences and toning down some of his more annoying tendencies, and that's precisely what I got. In fact, some of his scenes with his dad are legitimately heartfelt, and he has some of the coolest displays of powers inside the film. In fact, a particular sequence with Flash in the climax might be Snyder's visual effects masterpiece of his career thus far, and if he ever intends to top it, he's gonna have to work like a horse to do so. And then there's Steppenwolf, the big meme of the previous film. Not only is his design substantially better here, actually allowing him to emote and showcase a wider range of emotions, but his motivations are actually kind of sympathetic, and when you realize why this guy is here and he's doing all this stuff and has been doing it for so long, you actually kind of feel sorry for him. I would dare say that he's probably one of the best written DCEU villains, and I would already certainly put him a big notch above most of the Marvel people too. Other improvements include the score. There's no distracting Tim Burton Batman theme that absolutely does not fit in with this Batman. Instead, Junkie XL wanted to continue what he and Hans Zimmer kind of started with BVS. Wonder Woman's theme from BVS and her solo movie is reused here as well, to great effect I want to say, even though the choir that is frequently used for the Amazons and Wonder Woman is overused. It feels like every time Wonder Woman's on the screen, there's like a sad Greek lamentation music playing, and it's already become kind of a meme of the Snyder Cut. Flash's big climax moment at the end that I already talked about has a wonderful music score attached to it as well. There are good remixes of the Superman theme from Man of Steel that are used to great effect as well. Batman's theme from BVS doesn't quit quite as hard. He's not a caged animal banging on the cage like he was in that movie. The theme sounds kind of like more heroic, but it's lost a bit of that bite, which I think is unfortunate. But overall, the score much better fits in with the tone and style of these movies rather than whatever the fuck Elfman and Whedon were trying to do in the theatrical cut. Another big improvement is that the Justice League isn't useless. Yes, while Superman is a pivotal point in winning the battle, he does not immediately make everyone else completely worthless just by his sheer existence. This is a proper team effort where everybody has a role to play, and they all have a meaningful role in defeating Steppenwolf at the very end. It's not like the theatrical version where, oh, if Superman was just alive, he would have destroyed all these motherfuckers by himself, and the Justice League might as well not exist with him there. No, there are things that Superman here, even with his greater power level than all the others, cannot do, but he and all of them together are able to win because of the team effort. In fact, most of the plot is far more sensible than the theatrical cut. Almost everything in the movie actually gets a proper explanation. You realize, okay, so the mother boxes work like this because of this, this, and that. Okay, now I know why the fuck anyone is doing anything in this movie. There's no CG Superman mustache, of course. There's no shitty Batman intro where like the Parademon explodes and like the 3 boxes are left on his blood splatter or whatever. None of that shit. That being said, this is not a complete home run. This is still a 4-hour Zack Snyder movie, which was made on a different cut of the movie, and I really don't think that if Snyder was able to release his vision of the movie back in 2017, he would have made it 4 hours long. I really don't. Because there are scenes here that still kind of go on for too long, where they could have been cut out entirely, where you can really feel that Snyder is indulging himself in some of his own bullshit as usual. Nowhere near as much as in some of his other movies, but the scenes that do that stuff are here and they stick out really badly. Which brings me to the epilogue, easily the worst chunk of the movie by far. If you do not want to be spoiled about what happens in the epilogue, you can safely turn off the video. You already know that I have largely positive opinions about the Snyder Cut. I think it's worth a watch. I think if you're a fan of the Snyderverse, you already watched it like 10 times. If you're someone who is really disappointed with the theatrical cut, I think this one is going to impress you quite substantially. But if you're someone who does not like Snyder and his take on DC characters, I don't think this is going to convert you over to his side by any means of the imagination. So the epilogue is basically a collection of post and mid-credit scenes that aren't happening anywhere in the middle or after the credits, but immediately after the proper ending of the movie. The immediate problem with this is that these stretch out the ending pretty substantially, and they aren't good enough on their own to even warrant their own existence, never mind their placement in the story. The first one is nearly identical to the theatrical cut, where Lex Luthor and Deathstroke are talking about Superman's return on the boat, but instead of setting up the Injustice League, they're talking about Ben Affleck's Batman. That Deathstroke and him have a personal history, that Deathstroke wants to kill Batman pro bono, and Lex Luthor wants to help out with that by giving him Batman's secret identity. Obviously, this is set up for the original iteration of the Batman when Ben Affleck was going to direct, produce, star, and even write the thing. I don't have a problem with this because it kind of makes sense. Lex Luthor has obviously a grudge against Batman himself, so using Deathstroke to get rid of him and maybe screw over Superman by getting rid of one of his allies like that, it makes sense. It's really the next two post-credit scenes that really irk me because they serve no narrative purpose whatsoever but blatant shitty fan service. The first one is yet another nightmare sequence where Ben Affleck's Batman, Deathstroke, some remnants of the Justice League, and Mira meet up with Jared Leto's Joker. The Joker apparently has something that'll help them beat Superman or go back in time or something, and the whole sequence just exists so that Ben Affleck's Batman and Jared Leto's Joker can talk to one another on screen. And look, I was really hoping that Leto would try to redeem himself. I was really hoping that with another director on board, Leto would give a different take on the Joker, maybe something appealing to at least somewhat redeem for being a wet fart in Suicide Squad. That doesn't happen. I don't think Jared Leto's Joker works. His voice is impossibly annoying, and so is his laugh. And he does these really kind of annoying inflections with his voice between dialogue that are trying to come off as insane, but they're just really fucking irritating. And besides, we already have numerous nightmare sequences not only for Batman, but for Cyborg himself, and they acknowledge that there is some time travel shit going on in the movie's proper plot itself. The audience knows it from BVS and Justice League as well. So this whole scene of, oh my god, Superman is evil now, and he's gonna kill all of his old teammates, it really lacks punch, because we know this. We already know that Superman breaks bad because something terrible happens to Lois, and that Darkseid gets his clutches on him. This scene adds nothing. It doesn't give any greater context to anything. It's just there because Ben Affleck and Jared Leto said, sure, we'll come back for more scenes, and Snyder made some shit up for them to be together. The next one is just as bad because Martian fucking Manhunter decides, hey guys, I know I didn't do anything retroactively in Man of Steel or Batman vs. Superman to help you at all, but now seeing you guys together has really made me decide that I'm gonna fight for Earth 2 now. I also know about the anti-life equation and that it's on Earth, even though that makes no fucking sense that he would know that, given the fact that Steppenwolf had to get it from the mother boxes to figure it out. Oh, and by the way, I'm that favorite character from the comics, Martian Manhunter, see ya Bruce, bye. It's so lame. Not only does it make Martian Manhunter retroactively look like a complete fucking asshole in the previous two Snyder films, it once again adds nothing to the story, because as I already established, Batman, Cyborg, and the Justice League know that Darkseid is coming. They fucking see him in the movie. Diana talks about him in the flashback because he's the one who attacks Earth in this version. They know about all this stuff. Martian Manhunter literally does not tell Batman anything he doesn't already know, except, I guess, the anti-life equation, but that just brings up the aforementioned plot hole of how the fuck does he even know where the anti-life equation even is. Once again, it's a cool scene, but it's an example of some of Snyder's worst tendencies, where Snyder thinks that a moment is cool, and then he puts absolutely no thought into how that cool moment fits fits into the greater picture, and does it undermine the great picture, which in this instance I believe it absolutely does. If I ever did a fan edit of this movie, the second nightmare sequence and all the Martian Manhunter shit would get cut out immediately. Or if there has to be another nightmare sequence, at least have it end with Batman saying Darkseid is from the comics as the final shot of the movie. And honestly, like I already said, if you just place these as post or mid-credit sequences, I wouldn't care as much, but these scenes come immediately after the proper ending of the film. And because the last two of the three are not good or even logical in any kind of way, it just kind of leaves the movie ending on a wet fart when it didn't need to do that.